and what was. Take hold of your iman, don't give in to shaitan. Oh, you who believe, please give thanks to Allah. Allahu Ghafoor, Allahu Rahim, Allahu yuhibbul muhsinin, wa khaliquna wa raziquna.
Dear audience, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd like to welcome you to our episode from the program Converted to Islam. How marvelous to worship the only God, the Almighty Allah. How fabulous to be one of the followers of His Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And how fabulous to be one of the believers of His messengers, His holy book, the Holy Quran, and to take this holy book as your guide during your life. This is our program, How I Converted to Islam or Converted to Islam. Today I have the pleasure to have my guest today. He is Martin Ball. He is a supervisor in the English department in Riyadh Cement Company. Let's know more about him and his story of becoming a Muslim with this report. Pay attention.
Praise Him all day for what is and is Rahim. Allah is the one who loves the muhsinin.
Dear audience, let's just welcome our guest with me, Mr. Ball, Mr. Martin Ball. I'd like to welcome you, sir, with me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's my pleasure too. Sir, I can't express my feelings towards you when I knew that, mashallah, you joined Islam for a long time. But I'd like to give you the chance to tell our audience about the story of being a Muslim. Can you just tell us about these events?
Yeah, certainly. I was really looking for some kind of direction in my life. It wasn't going very well. I guess it sounds kind of sad, but I guess people are drawn to Islam for different reasons. For me, it was really, I was searching for something better than what I was.
Yes.
I kind of figured that if there was a God, which I'd always believed there was, I would be in some kind of trouble if I didn't change my ways.
Yes.
So once I decided this, or came to this conclusion, I suddenly started meeting Muslims. I was at university at the time. I just started, and I was on an engineering course, which was extremely difficult for me.
Yes.
And it provided me with some kind of solace, some kind of comfort to know that there was something out there, that somebody did love me, and perhaps I'm not quite so lost after all. And once I reached that conclusion, it was very easy to adapt to it. It wasn't easy to actually become a Muslim as per se, but it wasn't as hard as I'd thought. I actually did most of it by myself.
Was it like a venture?
Yeah, really, it was. One day I went to university and I was not a Muslim, and then I came home a Muslim.
Yeah.
And that was really weird.
That was really
I
weird.
kind of felt really different, even though I looked the same,
Yes.
And it's very hard to explain how I felt after I took my shahada with the guys in the prayer room, because that's all we had. We had a prayer room, and following them doing my first washing for the prayer.
Yeah.
And standing in my first prayer, just following what they did. I had no idea why they were, what they were doing.
We will go to this part, okay? But after telling me about your experience, how long have you been here in Saudi Arabia?
Almost, 10 years now.
10 years, mashallah, this is a long time. So how do you find this experience in such a religious country with this number of the Muslims, and of course with the residents of the two holy mosques?
Well, it was one of the reasons, it was one of the things that attracted me here. I guess it's because I'm a Gemini. But I tend to be very enthusiastic about something when I first encounter it, and I like it. I like to be the best at it. With Islam, it was a little different. It wasn't really something like a competition.
Yeah.
It was more finding somewhere that I could exist, and do what I want to do.
Yes.
I found it rather difficult in London because it was just after the Gulf War, and there wasn't very much tolerance towards Muslims at that time.
Yes.
And also before I became Muslim, I didn't know anything about Muslims at all.
Yeah.
So it really was a pleasure to come here and strike up a life and try to fit in.
Okay, let us make this equation. You became a Muslim 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You came to Saudi Arabia 10 years ago. So that means that you became a Muslim before coming here to Saudi Arabia. Tell
right.
me, is it right?
Yeah.
Yes. So, mashallah, you became a Muslim without visiting an Islamic country or having any Muslims friends. But tell me about the differences between practicing and performing Islam in your country. You are from England, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So just try to tell, I'd like you to tell me about the differences of the performance of Islam here in Saudi Arabia and there in London.
Well, here you only really have one kind of practice, which is Sunni Muslims and usually Arabs.
Yes.
Even the other nationalities who come here, they kind of conform to the way that Saudi Arabia practices Islam.
Yes.
Whereas in the West, it's not like that. You have many mosques of many different, churches. You have different denominations. You also have mosques for Nigerian. You have a Turkish mosque. You have other nationalities have their own mosques, and they do practice slightly differently from mosque to mosque. But you don't really get that here. And I've also seen in other travels around different Muslim countries, how they are very different.
They do not have this unified system or about
No,
Islamic teachings.
No, of course over there you can basically say what you want.
Yeah.
Here you can't. Everything's has to be in a certain sort of parameter,
Yes.
viewpoints. Whereas over there, if you can basically call a spade, and nobody's going to come and sort of trample your door down. So the imams over there are a little bit more vocal, perhaps, than they are here, unless they have sanctions to do it. But also just the practices, the small variations in the way people stand.
Yes.
It's here it's basically the same, but over there it's not. You can go to a general mosque, like say Regent's Park, and you'll see people praying in their own way.
Yeah.
So you'll see some guys standing with their hands by their sides.
Is that what you mean, that there is a shortage in the guidance itself?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just people's variations of the same thing. It's probably culture. They have the big sheikhs that govern people's beliefs.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Hanbalis in London. There's a lot of so therefore they have this way of performing prayers.
Yes.
That's slightly, I guess in essence it's the same. It's really just the way they stand, or what they do during the prayer, but they're still praying to God.
So I'm so curious to know about the first night you spent while you are a Muslim. The first night after being a Muslim, how you spent your night?
I think I spent it writing out the Fatiha in transliteration.
You were what?
Writing out the Fatiha into transliteration,
yes.
so that I could actually read it in front of me when I was praying. Because as I said, I was very enthusiastic about it, and I wanted to get it right. I was aware I'm standing in front of God, and I wanted to not to make a mistake. And so I would write out everything in this transliteration.
So the first thing, just to say that you recognize whom you are in front of.
Of course, yeah. As I said, I've always believed there's a God. Just because I was Christian before, it doesn't mean I didn't believe in him. It's just that we didn't really, because in the UK, religion isn't really a very high priority in life.
Yes, yeah.
Only in a very select sort of part of the community. Generally speaking, the normal people, they don't bother with church. Perhaps the only time they see the inside of a church is if someone dies in their family, or someone gets married, or there's a christening.
Yeah.
Other than that, they would never walk into a church.
Okay, let's go to say, I'd like you to tell me in general and also in a specific way for you about the difficulties that most or common, the common number of the Muslims in the European countries or in the other countries are having, the difficulties that they're having, and especially what happened to you after being a Muslim. What are the difficulties?
Well, I think the only difficulties I faced were, well, of course, with my family.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. I felt critical when I wanted to ask.
Even so, well, my stepfather was convinced that I'd been brainwashed. And I had to sit down and talk with him and say, look, you know, this is my decision. You can see I'm perfectly normal and sane. I'm not ranting and raving about anything.
And especially that there were no Muslims beside you, and there were no Muslims pushing you to be a Muslim?
Well, actually there were. I had a couple of friends at university. One was became my wife. Yeah. And we used to sit together in the library in study groups, and she would, after we'd finished studying, she would sort of like broach the subject about Islam, and I would sort of like brush it off a little bit. It was kind of interesting because I'd had a religious upbringing as a kid, and I knew all the stories of the Bible. Yeah. And when we started comparing stories, she was actually amazed that the stories I was telling were as she knew. According to what she'd learned as a Muslim. So we kind of got together and started having these discussions. The interest sparked from there. Yes. So it wasn't the fact that I kind of saw her and fell in love with her as far as we got talking and realized that there was many things in common, and this produced a natural interest in each other. Yes, yes. And then things moved on from there. But generally speaking, in Europe at that time, like 20 years ago, there weren't so many white Muslims as there perhaps are now. You know? One of the reasons actually that I asked her family to marry her in the end was because I didn't know any white Muslims. So she was, the guy that was teaching me was her teacher too. Yeah. And she introduced me to him. Yes. I had to go and, my introduction to him was going to pick him up at the airport. Yeah. And with his wife and kid and his brother, I think. Yes. And so when he got off the plane and come into the airport, we all came back together in his car. I think I was driving his car. Yeah. And I'd never met the guy before. And then after that we sat down and talked, and he became a very firm friend of mine. Mashallah. And he taught me so much after I became Muslim. To the point where I became almost, well, not obsessed with it, but really interested to learn about this new way of life that I'd sort of stepped into, you know. Yeah. I had to understand why I'd done it. You know, it seemed a good idea at the time, but then afterwards, when all the sort of excitement goes away and then the worry comes, and you know, you wonder how you can sustain that kind of life, you know, especially living in somewhere like London. That's right. People don't expect to see me walking around in a thope. Oh, good. And you are coming with a different culture, and with different clothes, and everything is just very strange for them. So you have to be distinguished. Oh, that's true. But I did hear that somewhere along the line, our Prophet ﷺ said that you know, when I think he was offered something to wear that he doesn't usually wear. Yes. And he said, "Thank you very much, but this is what I wear." Yeah. And right. I kind of felt like that. Yeah, I felt really out of place and uncomfortable.
So you tried to act as a true Muslim from the beginning?
I tried.
Yes.